Hey everyone, my name's Sinead, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about tutoring, my thoughts on tutoring, and just my general thoughts on tutoring in general. So I've been a tutor now for 3 years. I started in grade 11. I was tutoring maths. I didn't really tutor in grade 12 because those were the IB exam years. I had to focus on myself. And then for the past 2 years in my gap year and then my year at university, I've also been tutoring. I mainly tutor maths and science, and so this video is going to be specifically about those subjects, like science subjects. I mean, I didn't do biology. I don't know how applicable this is, but chemistry, physics, and maths, that's my expertise. I also have had a lot of experience with tutoring before whilst I was doing my IB exams. And also, I'm happy to announce that I'm launching an IB tutoring organization where you can go and find high-quality IB tutors. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. But this is not a sales pitch. I'm going to try in this video to talk more generally about how you can best use a tutor. So whether you use us or any other tutor that you have from any organization, this video will hopefully be helpful for you. The biggest myth behind tutoring is that tutoring solves all your problems. All you have to do is hire this guy for $40 an hour, and then by the end of 10 hours with him, you will have become a genius in your subject. His knowledge is now your knowledge. You're good. That is not the case. The biggest lesson that I learned from tutoring is that the tutor shouldn't be there to do the work for you. The tutor is really there to act as a guide rather than someone that's just going to, pour knowledge into your brain. Okay, so before we start, overall, is tutoring worth it or not? Even though I have a tutoring business, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but tutoring is actually not 100% necessary to pass your exams. Sometimes there's this myth that only the rich kids who can afford expensive tutoring can do well. That's just not the case. I didn't have a tutor for chemistry. I got a 7. It was fine. I think the main benefit of a tutor is accountability and guidance. One of the subjects that I took was Indonesian. It's not that I don't like studying languages, it's just that I really love science and math, and I just wanted to study those all day. And so I would never bring myself to actually properly study Indonesian. And also my teacher was terrible, so that didn't really help. And so I got a tutor for 2 hours a week. We would learn Indonesian together. And that was really helpful because I did learn a lot from him just through the interaction and talking in Indonesian. That was helpful. But the main reason that helped was because of accountability. If I didn't have a tutor to force me to study Indonesian, learn the language, talk, then I probably just wouldn't have done anything until right up towards the exams. And also I don't think I would have found as much enjoyment in the subject because I just found an amazing tutor who was super funny, and we just had a great time. However, alternatively, I have had tutoring which I found much less efficient. So for example, I had a physics tutor. I went to the lessons and he basically just lectured at me for the hour, and I was just so bored and tired, and so looking back, it was a complete waste of time. I would say that if you can be accountable, you can just sit down and do work. If you can figure out the answers for yourself, then you don't need a tutor to figure it out for you. But if you find difficulty doing the questions and being what is this? Having a tutor can be more efficient for that. If you really love the subject and you don't need motivation, then yeah, you probably don't need a tutor. Reasons why you may want a tutor is, like we said before, accountability. If you find it difficult to motivate yourself, having someone, assign you work and then you have to do it in a confined period of time, and that can really help. I would have not studied Indonesian if I didn't have a tutor. If you have a bad teacher, then having a tutor really helps. So yeah, those are just my general rambly thoughts. So let's talk about some bad practices of tutoring. So if your tutor does this, tell them to stop or find a new one. Obviously, caveats aside, depending on your circumstances, this may work for you. This is in my opinion. If your teacher is just lecturing at you information like their YouTube video, that's not very good. I had a tutor who did that. I'd just go there and he would just talk the entire time, and I would just be okay, cool. It was very boring. In my opinion, tutoring should be the place where you are working actively through problems and having discussions with your tutor. And so if your tutor can't facilitate discussion, doesn't help you to actively work through problems, talks too much generally, not a fan of that. Because then you're not really thinking. The tutor is doing all of the thinking and you're just there oh cool. They may as well have sent you a YouTube video. This kind of builds on top of that. If you are doing past papers with your tutor and they're just showing you the answer, and then they're oh, do you understand? And you're yes, and then they're okay, let's move on. Yikes, I would try and avoid that. When I'm tutoring and I'm helping students go through exam papers, I will never just tell them the answer unless they demand it, obviously. But I would never tell them the answer. Instead, I would just give them a hint or a nudge, or oftentimes I will just ask them another question. I'll rephrase the question and then try and get them to answer the question themselves. Because in the exam, your tutor's not going to help you. You have to learn how to do the questions yourself. So for example, if my student brings me a problem, they're like, oh, how do I solve this question? And I'm like, oh, so what area of physics is this? So what equation do you think we can use to solve this problem? And then they're like, oh, y equals mx plus c. I'm like, no, maybe a different one. Think about this. And then they're like, oh, what about this one? I'm like, no, how about we look at the data booklet? And then they look at the data booklet, and then they're like, oh, is it this one? I'm like, yes. Okay, why don't you try that? I basically just keep nudging them to try and work out the problem for themselves without actually telling them, so that they have to go through the critical thinking process themselves, because that's what they need to learn for the exams. If you have a teacher who's just spitting at you information, that's not really good. You need a teacher who's going to guide you and help nudge you in the right direction. You need a tutor who will guide you through the forest, not a tutor who's going to pick you up and carry you through. Another thing that I would watch out for, and I think is pretty bad, is tutors who just teach tips and tricks and hacks rather than actual foundational concepts and understanding. Like, for example, this happens with calculus a lot. Oftentimes, students, before they learn it in class, they'll learn calculus with a tutor who just teaches them all the fast, quick hacks of calculus so that they can do it fast and use the quick formulas without actually understanding the material. When I'm tutoring, I'm trying to really emphasize the base foundational concepts, because once you have those base foundational concepts down, then you can use the hacks and stuff. You can derive the hacks from the base foundational concepts. But if you're just learning the hack, when it comes to the exam, the question could just be phrased slightly differently, and your hack doesn't work anymore, and you have no idea what to do. So you need to get a tutor who's good at helping you understand the foundational concepts. I hope that makes sense. So in general, you found a good tutor if, one, they're not talking too much and they're engaging you in discussion, they're interesting and fun to work with, they are guiding you and nudging you in the direction and not just immediately giving you the answer, and if they're creating a nice fun environment where you're allowed to make mistakes and you can learn from them. If they're beating you over the stick and getting mad at you for making mistakes, that's not that good. Again, this is just my opinion. That's how I like to tutor. Maybe lecturing works for you. I don't know, I found it pretty boring. Okay, so secondly, I'm going to be talking about the tutoring methods that I use in the IB, which I found success with. So these are the two methods that I use to teach, and they're based off what I learned in IB. If you care about qualifications, I got a 43, 7s in all of my maths and science subjects, and this is what worked for me. So the first style of tutoring is content-based tutoring. This is basically where I'll essentially go through a slideshow with the student, which sounds really boring, but slideshows help because they allow you to visualize concepts on the screen. And so I'll have lots of fun diagrams and nifty pictures and stuff. And throughout the slides, which have the content, I'll add little activities to help the student reinforce their understanding. I'm a visual learner, so I'll also have my iPad, and we'll do diagrams. We'll try and derive the main concepts from first principles. If I'm working in a group, what I'll do is I'll ask students to explain concepts to each other and help teach each other. That way, working in a group, you can learn and grow from each other. And that's really good because I think one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it to someone else. And so I try to apply that principle throughout all of my tutoring classes. And whilst we're learning content, we're really just trying to get a feel for the material so that eventually we can apply. I have separate lesson structures for each of the topics. That's just kind of a general explanation of how content studying usually works. It's usually just going through a slideshow, doing the activities, and really trying to discuss and break down the concepts into first principles so that we can understand it from a foundational level. Because once you understand something from its principles, its foundations, then you can solve any problem. The second tutoring method that I use is my exam preparation tutoring method. This helped me so much, and it was very efficient too, so I'll describe what I did here. This is a really good method that you can bring to any tutor and be like, I want to do this. So the IB exams are all about bashing through past papers, right? You need to bash through as many past papers as you can. But I was finding that I would just be staring at a question for 2 hours, confused about what to do with it. And that would take so much time, and it would take me a whole day to do one past paper. I was just researching for hours, how do I do this? And so I found that I was wasting a lot of time. And so I got a tutor to help me with this. Basically what I would do is that every week I would go through past papers. I would just do as many as I can that week, and then I would have a folder in my laptop or on my iPad where I would screenshot questions I was having problems with and then move them into this folder. Then I would just move on, because if I were to spend more time, it would just be a waste of time. So basically what I would do is that when I got stuck on the problem, I would be like, okay, I'm gonna work on this, try and figure out what the answer is for 15 minutes, and then if I can't get it by then, I'm going to move on, because otherwise that's just a waste of time. And so basically just over the week, I was just accumulating questions which I had problems with, and then I would email them to my tutor, and then in the tutoring lesson, we would just go through all of the questions that I had problems with, and this was really efficient because we were getting right to the main problems which I wasn't able to solve on my own, and the tutor doesn't have to like really prepare anything. They can just explain it to you and you don't have to worry about it. You can just bash through them quickly, and if you find that, oh, there's a huge knowledge gap there, then you can be like, okay, can we like break this down a bit and like explain it from first principles so that I can like close that knowledge gap. I found that this was very efficient, and it was really good because, you know, you don't need to spend time with tutors going through easy problems. You can do those by yourself. Spend time with tutors doing the hard stuff, having someone explain it to you that's good at explaining things. It's going to be more efficient than spending hours and hours googling what the question is and then having a mental breakdown because you feel like you'll never be able to understand. If you have already finished content and you're ready to move on to past paper questions, in particularly for physics and math and chemistry, it's all about bashing through those past papers. And so yeah, I would highly recommend that method. I'm getting my sisters to do that for their tutors, and they're doing well, so yeah. Be suspicious of tutoring companies who are like, okay, so just buy the 10 hours straight up and that's the only option that you have. No free trial, just you gotta buy 10 hours and then go to it. If there's no free trial or option to do pay-as-you-go, then that means the company doesn't have faith that if you only do a few lessons that you'll continue to stay with them, and so they force you into these 10-hour packets so that they can get as much money out of you as they can. I offer free trial lessons, I offer pay-as-you-go, I do offer discounts for if you do want to buy 10 hours or something, but I just generally think that like you should be allowed to like get a test and taster to see what the tutor is like before you commit to them long term. If you have a tutor and you just have like a feeling that like, oh, this just does not feel right, you know, like this guy talks too much, he's kind of annoying, he's rude, just, you know, move on to the next one. Keep trying until you find a good one. Don't settle for anyone that's mediocre, you know, gotta find one that works for you. And given that you can do them online these days, doing a few trial lessons is, in my opinion, a good investment in order to find like a tutor that can really help you. And so yeah, to end on that note, I hope you find a tutor or have at least a teacher that can help you. If you're ambitious enough, you can do it on your own. But if you are interested in tutoring, I'm going to leave a link to my website down below. All of us have above 40, so qualifications, there you go. But if you don't want to work with us, that's fine. You can bring the tips and advice that I've given in this video to your tutor of choice. You could just grab your older sister that did the IB and ask them to use the methods that I've used in this video. But yeah, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.